I'm very grateful to being in that position in a way when I hit rock bottom because of it.
We can't do this anymore. We can't. Those 7 words, spoken through streaming tears by Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, at 8:47 PM GMT, on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday evening, sent shockwaves through every corner of the British establishment. Sitting beside her, Prince Andrew, his face a mask of anguish, his hands trembling, could barely maintain eye contact with the camera. What happened next? You won't believe it. But before we get there, you need to understand how we arrived at this moment. Because this wasn't just a breakdown. This was the culmination of years of scandals, whispers in palace corridors, and secrets that the royal family desperately wanted to keep buried. Stick with me. This story has everything: forbidden romance, financial ruin, palace intrigue, and a twist that nobody, not even the most seasoned royal correspondents, saw coming. The 4-hour warning. Let me take you back to 4:13 p.m. that same day. Major television networks across Britain, BBC, ITV, Sky News, simultaneously received an encrypted message marked urgent and confidential. The communication came from a legal representative for Prince Andrew, Duke of York. The message was brief, but sent every royal correspondent into a frenzy. The Duke of York and Sarah, Duchess of York, will be making a joint live statement of national importance tonight at 8 p.m. GMT. We respectfully request broadcast coverage. No questions will be taken. Further details to follow. National importance? From Prince Andrew and Fergie? Together? The palace hadn't been notified. King Charles's office knew nothing. Prince William's team was blindsided. This was a rogue operation, and everyone in royal circles knew it meant something catastrophic was coming. Royal editor Rebecca Marshall was in her BBC office when the notification arrived. "My hands literally started shaking," she later told colleagues. "In 30 years of covering the royals, I've never seen anything like this. Andrew going solo? With Fergie? Without palace approval? I knew we were about to witness something historical, and probably disastrous." Social media erupted within minutes of the announcement leaking. Twitter, or X as it's now called, was ablaze with speculation. Breaking: Prince Andrew to address Epstein allegations live? Is Andrew being stripped of his titles? Fergie cancer update? Are they getting remarried? The trending topics told the story. Hashtag Prince Andrew, hashtag Sarah Ferguson, hashtag Royal Family, and hashtag Royal Lodge all climbed to the top of the charts. Betting agencies in Britain immediately opened odds on what the announcement would be. The favorites? A cancer diagnosis? A financial scandal? Or, most shocking of all, Andrew fleeing the country? Nobody predicted what actually happened. The years of scandal. To understand this moment, you need to understand the pressure cooker that Andrew and Fergie have been living in. Sometimes together, sometimes apart, but always connected by threads of scandal, debt, and desperation. Let's start with Andrew. Prince Andrew, the third child and second son of Queen Elizabeth II, was once known as Randy Andy, the Playboy Prince, the war hero who flew helicopters in the Falklands War, the man who seemed to have everything. He married Sarah Ferguson in 1986 in a ceremony watched by millions. They had 2 daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, and seemed like the picture of royal happiness. But cracks appeared quickly. The divorce came in 1996, amid rumors of Fergie's financial indiscretions and photographs of her having her toes sucked by her financial advisor, John Bryan. The tabloids had a field day. The Queen was reportedly furious. Andrew and Fergie became the royal embarrassments. Yet, and this is where it gets interesting, they never really separated. Not fully. Despite the divorce, Andrew and Fergie continued living together on and off for years. They shared Royal Lodge, that sprawling 30-room mansion in Windsor Great Park worth an estimated £30 million. They went on vacations together, They attended family events as a unit. Fergie herself has said numerous times, "We're the happiest divorced couple in the world." But happiness came at a price, and that price was mounting year after year. Enter Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew's friendship with the convicted offender and financier Jeffrey Epstein has been extensively documented. But the full story is even more disturbing than most people realize. Andrew visited Epstein's private island. He stayed at his New York mansion. He was photographed with his arm around Virginia Giuffre, then Virginia Roberts, a 17-year-old girl who claims Epstein trafficked her and that she was forced to have intimate encounters with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions. Andrew has consistently denied these allegations, but in 2019, he gave that disastrous interview to BBC Newsnight's Emily Maitlis. You know the one, the interview where he claimed he couldn't have been at the London nightclub Tramp on the night in question because he was at Pizza Express in Woking with his daughter. The interview, where he said he couldn't sweat due to an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War, contradicting Giuffre's claim that he was sweating profusely. The interview was catastrophic. Within days, Andrew was forced to step back from royal duties. Charities dropped him. Military titles were under review. He became toxic. Then came the settlement. In February 2022, Andrew reached an out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre. The amount was never officially disclosed, but reports suggest it was around £12 million. Andrew admitted no wrongdoing, but the payment spoke volumes. The money reportedly came from the Queen and possibly Prince Charles, now King Charles. But here's what many people don't know. The financial strain on Andrew didn't end there. It got worse. Fergie's financial troubles. Now let's talk about Sarah Ferguson. Fergie, as she's universally known. Fergie has spent decades battling financial troubles that would break most people. After her divorce from Andrew, she received a settlement of just £15,000 per year, a pittance by royal standards. She was essentially cut off by the royal family, persona non grata at many official events, snubbed and sidelined. To make ends meet, she became a commercial entity. She wrote books, did speaking engagements, became a spokesperson for Weight Watchers, and launched various business ventures. Some succeeded. Many failed spectacularly. In 2010, she was caught in a newspaper sting trying to sell access to Prince Andrew for £500,000. The video is cringeworthy. Fergie, clearly having drunk too much wine, negotiating with an undercover reporter posing as a businessman, saying things like, £500,000 when you can, to me. I can open any door you want. The scandal was enormous. The shame was public. The humiliation was complete. But Fergie is resilient, or perhaps stubborn. She rebuilt her reputation slowly, focusing on her daughters and her charity work. She became a breast cancer survivor, speaking openly about her diagnosis. Then, in early 2024, she was diagnosed with skin cancer, specifically malignant melanoma, after a mole was removed during reconstructive surgery following her mastectomy. The health scares brought public sympathy, but they also brought something else: medical bills, fear, and a renewed sense of mortality. Behind the scenes, according to palace insiders, both Andrew and Fergie were drowning financially. Royal Lodge, that magnificent mansion they called home, became a millstone around Andrew's neck. King Charles reportedly wanted Andrew to downsize to the more modest Frogmore Cottage. Yes, the same residence Harry and Meghan were evicted from. The maintenance costs of Royal Lodge were estimated at £400,000 per year. Andrew was responsible for these costs under his lease agreement, but sources close to the family suggest he was struggling to meet them. Then there were the legal fees, the settlement with Giuffre, the security costs, because even disgraced royals face threats and need protection, the lifestyle expenses for someone who grew up as a prince and couldn't fathom living any other way. Friends of the couple have whispered for years about mounting debts, about arguments with the king's office, about desperation setting in. One palace source, speaking on condition of anonymity, told reporters months before this broadcast, "Andrew and Sarah are living on borrowed time and borrowed money. Something has to give. The question isn't if they'll crack, it's when." Tonight was when. The broadcast begins. At exactly 8 p.m. GMT, the broadcast began. The setting was deliberate. The drawing room at Royal Lodge, filled with family photographs, warm lighting, and the trappings of a life that appeared comfortable but was anything but. 2 chairs were positioned close together. Between them, a small table with a box of tissues, a detail that immediately signaled this would be emotional. The camera feed went live across multiple networks. An estimated 8.7 million people in Britain alone tuned in immediately. Within minutes, that number doubled as word spread globally. Prince Andrew appeared first, walking into frame with the posture of a man heading to the gallows. He wore a dark suit, no tie, casual for a royal, which itself was unusual. His face was drawn, pale, older than his 64 years. He sat down carefully, as if the chair might collapse beneath him. Then came Sarah Ferguson. Fergie looked simultaneously defiant and defeated. She wore a simple dark dress, minimal makeup, her famous red hair, styled but not elaborately. She sat beside Andrew, and here's what millions of viewers noticed immediately. They were holding hands, not just casually. Their fingers were interlaced, white-knuckled, gripping each other like drowning people clutching a life raft. For 15 seconds, 15 eternal seconds, they simply sat there, staring at the camera. No words, just breathing, just fear. Then Andrew spoke. The statement. "Good evening." His voice cracked immediately. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Good evening. My name is Andrew, Duke of York. Beside me is Sarah, Duchess of York, my former wife, my best friend, and the mother of my daughters." Fergie's eyes were already glistening with tears. "We have asked for this time tonight to speak directly to the British people, to our family, and to our daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, whom we love beyond measure." He paused, swallowed hard, glanced at Fergie. She squeezed his hand, nodded slightly, gave him permission to continue. "For many years, I have been a source of embarrassment to my family, to the institution of the monarchy, and to the country I love. I have made choices that have brought shame upon everyone connected to me. I have caused pain to people who deserve none of it, and I have failed in my duty as a prince, as a father, and as a man. This was unprecedented. A senior royal, even a disgraced one, publicly flagellating himself on live television without palace handlers, without carefully crafted statements, without any control." Fergie took over, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tears now streaming down her face. "I too have failed. I have been reckless with money, with trust, with the privileges I was given through my marriage and my titles. I have embarrassed my daughters. I have disappointed the late Queen Elizabeth, who showed me kindness even when I didn't deserve it. And I have taken advantage of a system that protected me even when I should have been protecting it." Viewers watching at home were stunned. Social media was exploding. News anchors were speechless. What was happening? Andrew continued. "For the past several years, Sarah and I have been living in a situation that has become untenable. We have accumulated debts that we cannot repay. We have maintained a lifestyle funded by the goodwill of my family, particularly my brother, His Majesty the King, who has shown me more patience and generosity than I deserved." Wait, were they admitting to being broke? On live television? The maintenance of Royal Lodge alone has cost hundreds of thousands of pounds per year, money that should have gone to charities, to causes that matter, to people who need it far more than we do. Instead, it has gone to maintaining a facade of royal grandeur for 2 people who no longer serve the crown in any meaningful capacity. Fergie jumped in. "We have been living a lie, a beautiful, privileged, suffocating lie, and we can't do it anymore. We can't." There it was. The line that would be played on repeat for days, weeks, months to come. The resignation. Then came the hammer blow. Andrew straightened in his chair, mustering whatever dignity he had left. Effective immediately, I am resigning from all remaining royal patronages and associations. I am formally requesting that His Majesty the King remove my Duke of York title and any remaining military affiliations. I am stepping away from the royal family completely. The gasps from journalists watching in newsrooms were audible. This wasn't a suspension. This wasn't a stepping back. This was a complete severance. But he wasn't done. Furthermore, Sarah and I will be vacating Royal Lodge within 60 days. We will be relocating outside of the United Kingdom to begin a new life away from the spotlight, away from the pressure, and away from the institution that we have both damaged through our actions. Leaving the country? The son of Queen Elizabeth II was essentially going into exile? Fergie was now openly sobbing, her carefully composed facade crumbling. Our daughters, she managed to say through tears, Beatrice and Eugenie, did not ask for any of this. They have been perfect. They have been strong. They have supported us through scandals that would have destroyed lesser people. We love them. And we are doing this partly to protect them from being further tainted by association with us. Andrew added, Beatrice and Eugenie will remain working members of the royal family if they choose. This decision is ours alone. They are not responsible for our failures. The camera held on their faces. Tears, devastation, but also something else. Relief? The questions that exploded. Within seconds of those words being spoken, the speculation began cascading. Where would they go? Reports immediately surfaced suggesting Portugal, where Andrew and Fergie own a property together, a 7-bedroom villa in the Costa Terra Golf and Ocean Club, purchased in 2022. Others suggested Dubai, where Andrew has connections and where financial transparency is flexible. What about money? If they're broke, how could they afford to live abroad? This immediately sparked theories about secret financial arrangements, possible book deals, or even, whisper it, paid interviews. One tabloid immediately offered £5 million for an exclusive sit-down. American networks were probably offering double. What does King Charles think? Palace sources were frantically being contacted. Charles was reportedly at Clarence House when the broadcast began and watched it alone in his study. According to one source, he simply said, "So it's done then," and poured himself a drink. Prince William was said to be incandescent with rage that Andrew had gone rogue without consultation. What about the Epstein allegations? Andrew conspicuously did not address them directly in his statement, which victim advocates immediately criticized. But by removing himself entirely from public life, was he essentially admitting guilt without saying the words? Is this really about money, or is there more? The most delicious speculation. Was Andrew facing new legal jeopardy? Were there allegations or evidence about to surface that would be even more damaging? Was this resignation a preemptive strike? The Fergie factor. But perhaps the most fascinating element was Fergie herself. Here's what many people don't realize. Sarah Ferguson has been Andrew's most consistent defender throughout all of his scandals. When the Epstein allegations emerged, she stood by him. When the Virginia Giuffre settlement happened, she publicly stated her belief in his innocence. When the royal family essentially ostracized him, she remained at Royal Lodge, by his side. Why? Some say it's love. That despite the divorce, they never truly fell out of love and remained soulmates. Friends of the couple insist this is true, that they intended to remarry once the circumstances were right. Others whisper something darker. Codependency. Two people so damaged by scandal, so bound by shared humiliation, that they couldn't function apart. And then, there's the most cynical interpretation. Financial necessity. Fergie needed Andrew's royal connections and the housing he provided. Andrew needed Fergie's emotional support and the shield of having a partner to present a united front. The truth? Probably all of the above. During the broadcast, Fergie said something that sent royal watchers into overdrive. Andrew and I have been each other's anchor through storms that would have sunk us individually. Whatever mistakes he has made, and there have been many, I know his heart, I know his character, and I know that we deserve a chance to live our remaining years with some peace and dignity. That phrase, whatever mistakes he has made, was immediately dissected. Was she tacitly acknowledging wrongdoing regarding Epstein? Or was she carefully not acknowledging anything while still being supportive? One body language expert noted, when Fergie says that line, Andrew flinches. It's subtle, but it's there. He's uncomfortable with even that level of ambiguity. He wants complete exoneration, but he's not going to get it. The palace response. For 2 hours after the broadcast ended, Buckingham Palace was silent. Then, at 10:45 p.m., a statement was released. The King has been made aware of the Duke of York's statement. This is a personal decision made by the Duke and Duchess of York. The King wishes them well in their future endeavors. No further comment will be made at this time. That's it. Cold, formal, distant. The subtext was deafening. You're on your own now. Prince William's office released an even shorter statement. The Prince of Wales has no comment on this matter. Translation: don't associate us with this disaster. But privately, palace sources were telling a different story. Multiple royal correspondents received anonymous briefings painting a picture of an institution that had reached its breaking point with Andrew and Fergie. The King has been incredibly patient, one source said. He's covered debts, he's provided security, he's tried to help Andrew downsize gracefully, but Andrew refused every offer, made every situation more difficult, and now he's made a complete spectacle of himself and dragged Sarah into it. Good riddance, frankly. Another source was more sympathetic. This is a tragedy. Andrew was a war hero. He served his country. Yes, he made catastrophic errors in judgment with Epstein, but he's still the late Queen's son. To see him reduced to this, to see him essentially exiled, is heartbreaking, regardless of what you think of him. The daughter's silence. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of this entire saga. Beatrice and Eugenie said nothing. Both princesses, 36 and 34 respectively, with children and lives of their own, were reportedly blindsided by their parents' decision to go public in this manner. Sources close to the princesses suggest they were informed only hours before the broadcast, barely giving them time to process what was about to happen. Neither posted on social media, neither released statements. Their silence spoke volumes. Friends of the princesses suggested they were devastated, but also, perhaps, relieved. For years, Beatrice and Eugenie have tried to carve out roles for themselves within the royal framework, while constantly being reminded of their father's disgrace. Every event they attended, every charity they supported, every photo published of them came with an asterisk: daughters of disgraced Prince Andrew. One friend told a tabloid, "They love their parents desperately, but this has been hanging over them like a dark cloud for years. If this resignation means they can finally step out of that shadow, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. But watching your parents fall apart on live television, that's traumatic, regardless of the circumstances." The financial reality. In the days following the broadcast, investigative journalists went to work piecing together the financial picture that drove Andrew and Fergie to this drastic decision. What emerged was a portrait of aristocratic impoverishment. People living in mansions they couldn't afford, maintaining appearances while drowning in debt. According to financial analysts who spoke to multiple sources, Royal Lodge maintenance was £400,000 plus annually. Security costs were estimated at £3 million per year, partially funded by the Crown, but Andrew was responsible for a portion. Staff salaries. Multiple household employees at Royal Lodge. Legal fees. The Joffrey settlement alone was reportedly £12 million. But Andrew's legal fees over the years of fighting allegations could have been several million more lifestyle expenses. Travel, clothing, entertainment, gifts. The expenses of people who grew up royal and never learned to budget. Where was the money coming from? Andrew's naval pension was modest. He had no official income after stepping back from royal duties. Fergie's various ventures, writing children's books, speaking engagements, her tea company, generated income, but nothing like what was needed. The reality: King Charles was reportedly giving Andrew a living allowance estimated at £250,000 per year. But it wasn't enough, and the king had apparently decided he'd had enough of subsidizing his brother's lifestyle. One financial advisor who reviewed the available information stated, "This is a case study in aristocratic decline. They had the assets, property, connections, titles, but no liquid wealth and massive overhead. It's the classic situation of being asset-rich but cash-poor, except in this case, they didn't even own the assets. They were essentially squatting in a palace they couldn't afford." The decision to relocate abroad suddenly made financial sense. In Portugal, their villa is owned outright. Living costs are substantially lower than in Britain. They can live comfortably on far less money, especially if they secure the inevitable book deals and interviews that will follow. The conspiracy. Theories. Of course, no royal scandal is complete without conspiracy theories, and this situation spawned some impressive ones. Some online sleuths became convinced that one or both of them had received a terminal diagnosis. Perhaps Fergie's cancer had returned and was worse than reported, and this was their way of securing their daughters' futures and their own legacy before time ran out. Theory number 2. The secret prosecution. This theory suggested that Andrew was facing imminent prosecution, perhaps from the FBI regarding Epstein connections. And this resignation was a strategic retreat to a country without extradition treaties, though Portugal actually does have an extradition treaty with the US, which poked holes in this theory. Theory number 3. The real remarriage. A more romantic theory that Andrew and Fergie have been secretly planning to remarry for years, and this whole dramatic exit was theater to allow them to finally live as a couple without royal constraints, supporting evidence. They bought that Portugal villa together in 2022. Theory number 4. The palace coup. The darkest theory, that King Charles essentially forced this outcome, giving Andrew an ultimatum: resign and leave voluntarily, or face being formally stripped of everything in a much more humiliating public process. The voluntary resignation was actually anything but. Which theory is correct? Probably elements of several. Reality is usually more complex than any single narrative. The bigger picture. But step back from the drama, the tears, the financial revelations, and ask the bigger question: what does this mean for the monarchy itself? This is the second major resignation in just a few years. First Harry and Meghan, now Andrew and Fergie. The institution is shedding members, contracting, becoming smaller and more vulnerable. King Charles's vision of a slimmed-down monarchy is coming true, but perhaps not in the way he envisioned. Rather than a carefully managed transition to a lean, efficient institution, we're seeing dramatic exits, public ruptures, and scandals that damage the Crown's reputation. Constitutional expert Dr. Margaret Henley noted, "Every time a senior royal leaves in scandal or acrimony, it raises questions about the institution's relevance and sustainability. The monarchy survives on public consent and respect. When that erodes, as we're seeing, the entire structure becomes more precarious." Others argued the opposite. The monarchy is stronger without Andrew. He was a liability, a walking scandal waiting to happen. His departure, however messy, removes a problem the institution can now move forward without that baggage. Perhaps both perspectives are true. The human cost. But beneath all the analysis, the speculation, the palace intrigue, and the financial breakdowns, there's a human story here that's easy to forget. Two people, flawed, problematic, privileged beyond measure, reached a breaking point. Whether you have sympathy for them or not, watching two individuals, now in their 60s, having to dismantle the only life they've ever known and start over in a foreign country is inherently sad. Andrew was born into royalty. He never chose it, never asked for it. Yes, he benefited enormously from it. Yes, he made disastrous choices within that framework. But he's still a human being watching his identity, his purpose, and his place in the world dissolve on live television. Fergie, who married into this world and was spat out by it, who has spent decades trying to claw back some dignity and security, was back to square one, older, scarred by cancer, and facing an uncertain future. Their daughters, no matter how mature and independent, were watching their parents publicly implode. The late Queen Elizabeth, who loved Andrew deeply despite everything, was not alive to see this final humiliation. Perhaps that's a mercy. Conclusion. As the screen faded to black at the end of that historic broadcast, one question lingered in the minds of millions of viewers. What happens next? Andrew and Fergie disappeared from public view immediately after the broadcast. Their representatives confirmed they would be taking time for privacy and preparation before their relocation. Translation. They're hiding. The 60-day timeline they mentioned for vacating Royal Lodge started ticking. Moving trucks were reportedly scheduled. The Portugal villa was being prepared. But the story isn't over. There will be interviews. There always are. Someone will pay millions for the real story. Books will be written, documentaries made, dramatizations produced. This moment will be analyzed, reanalyzed, and mythologized for decades. And somewhere in Portugal, two people who were once at the center of the British establishment will be starting over, trying to build a life away from the cameras, the scrutiny, and the weight of titles they can no longer carry. Whether you see them as victims of circumstance, architects of their own downfall, or something in between, one thing is certain: the royal family will never be quite the same. And neither will Andrew and Fergie. The last image millions of viewers remembered from that broadcast was simple, but haunting. Andrew and Fergie, still holding hands, standing up from their chairs together. No words, just that grip, desperate, determined, devoted. They walked out of frame together, just as they've weathered every storm together for nearly 40 years. Whatever comes next, they'll face it the same way. Together. This has been the story of the night Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson resigned from royal life on live television. A night of tears, truth, and transformation. A night that will be remembered as one of the most dramatic moments in modern royal history. The monarchy continues, the crown endures, but some fairy tales don't have happy endings. They just have endings. And please, if you enjoyed the video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more royal news updates like this.